To the Scale Up Show. This is your host, Ryan Staley, and I have a very special guest back with me today. I have Brendan Kamm. He is the CEO of Thnks, which is a gratitude platform to integrate with customers. That's kind of a crappy way of describing it, but if you want to hear the much better version of how I describe it, listen to episode 1. Brendan drops some bangers in terms of the best use cases that he has seen across his entire portfolio of clients and what people are responding to the best in terms of connecting and developing long-term relationships. Brendan, welcome. Happy to have you back, man.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm excited to be back.
Yeah. So we are going to go through round 2. So like I said, round 1, he gave away his secret sauce in terms of what he sees working at scale in terms of building client relationships. Today, we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we are going to talk about some really unique things. I think I want to hit on the AI portion because my audience will throw tomatoes at me, even if they're virtually if I do not. So, let's kick that off in a couple of ways. And I'm going to ask you a question. I didn't even prep you on this. How do you use, first of all, pick your tool. What's your large language model tool that you use to? Is it ChatGPT? Is it Gemini? Is it Copilot? Is it Claude? Do you have a go-to model that you leverage?
I'm a dabbler, so I've used them all. I don't probably the biggest thing for me, even just a couple of months ago, I obviously coming onto this podcast, I would have Googled you to learn more about you. But today I perplexity'd you. So things are definitely changing. I love using all the tools and just trying them out. I think it's super important. I'd say I'm back on ChatGPT for now. They got me with the new release, right? So I came back to it. But I'm constantly kind of changing things up, testing things. I like to also just use a couple at the same time. So if you can have ChatGPT and Claude open, right, and just see the different responses. And I'm not a big just use what the AI gives you. But I think it's a great way to sort of help supplement and improve. So using multiple models is really helpful in that regard.
Love that. Yeah, that's what I do too, man. I'm actually been blown away as of the time of this recording. We're like mid-July. I've been blown away with Claude. So I've been using Claude and love some things that you can do with the artifacts feature where you can combine multiple docs and create like insane output. I was actually creating a mock-ups of like SaaS products in there, which, I have no coding experience. That was pretty cool. So what's your favorite use case then? Like as a CEO, you have a thriving SaaS company. On the last episode, you mentioned between that 30 and 40 million mark. What do you use it for, right? And give me your top, let's say 3 use cases that you love.
So my honestly core use case is with my writing, even just emails, but anything I'm writing, I tend to run it through. I've created sort of custom bots that reflect our sort of brand values, and that's been really helpful. And I can just run it through and say, hey, am I on target? Am I saying the things that I want to say with my brand, right? So I find that helpful. I think the biggest change for me has been moving from almost using it like you would use search, because it's just the natural, I've been Googling stuff for years, so I'm going to use this sort of the same way, and shifting to more conversational. It feels kind of weird, and you're like, I'm going to have a conversation with this computer, but the outputs are better, right? So having more of an ongoing conversation, and I will literally throw an idea out, and the same way I might go to my VPs and say, what do you guys think about this? I'll throw it into ChatGPT or Claude and just, give me some of that feedback. And it takes time. I think you get that initial response always feels very generic, but I find that if you kind of keep going and almost challenge the AI, you can start to get sort of more stuff. And then I'll throw in, how would Ryan Staley respond to this? How would Jason Lemkin respond to this? Right? And you start to get a little bit of that. So I just find it really, it's a rabbit hole. So you got to be a little careful about not getting too stuck. I've had a little less success trying to get, doing a lot of data, hey, find some more insights in this data. It just doesn't always have the context, and maybe that's just how I'm using it. But I haven't been as successful with that. Coding a little bit more on the SQL side, definitely, or even complex Excel things I'm trying to do. It definitely cuts down on the time instead of searching through a whole bunch of, Stack Adapt old forums and things. So I find that to be really well.
Yeah, I mean, those are great use cases, man. I love the collaboration. I saw with one of my clients, they cut out 3 months of work by creating an integrated campaign and marketing, sharing it, and then actually having it inserted into the product in time for the Olympics. And they're like, we wouldn't have got that done, right? So that was like a use case I love because it was like multiple different areas within a department and then multiple departments like rapidly creating something to get done, you know what I mean, in a fast
Right.
manner.
I've definitely been preaching the like, I mean, look, our business is human to human and relationships, and you can't replace that with an AI. But that doesn't mean don't, I mean, if you're doing that the right way, you should be using AI more and more because what it can do is exactly what you said. If I can take all my non-human interactions and make that less time consuming and less focused on the operational and the sort of behind the scenes things, I have more time to spend building relationships.
Exactly.
And I truly believe that's obviously what's going to drive your business. And the AI can help so much, but that doesn't mean it has to be the direct thing trying to, you know, tell you what to say, or if you're going to give something, like it can solve all the other things so that you can actually put your time and mental effort towards, okay, how am I going to build these relationships?
Yeah, I agree with you 100% because there's like let's take sales for example. Like 72% is on like non-customer related activities that the time is
Yeah.
spent on. So even if you cut out 30% of that, you effectively double the amount of selling time that someone has, which is like taps directly into relationships. You know what I mean? So
Right.
there's massive opportunity that's just on the time side. That's not even in terms of like scaling intelligence. So like I
Right.
love the fact that you created something like, did you create GPTs for your brand guide? Is that what you did? Like something along that?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
So
what
how
led me
did
back to Chat
what's
GPT,
that?
right? The open was pretty good with the custom GPTs.
So let me ask you this, because like it's funny, I was testing it. So I created a prompt, a Jason Lemkin prompt, and
Okay.
I created a Latham Jeffkin as a joke, like GPT, and the
Right.
prompt alone was experiencing better results than the GPT. So when you built that out, you know, first of all, I guess what's your experience with that? And I'm sure if I worked with it longer, I spent probably I don't know I spent maybe 20% of the time creating the prompt that I did working on the
Yeah.
GPT, and the prompt was better. So there's a lot
Right.
more, I think, into creating the GPTs. What's your thoughts on that? And like, how did you kind of build it out?
Yeah, it's funny because you kind of start with the basics, right? I uploaded my brand guidelines and said, this is what my company does. And I just want you to, anything I put in and give you, I want you to rewrite it and make sure it fits the context of, right, these keywords in this brand. And what you find is as you use it, every time I use it, I'm going in and adding new things.
Yeah.
And it actually starts to look like a code block after a little while, right? Like it's, I've got like recursion and things going on within the prompts and the GPT. Um, it's funny to me because even if you don't get that deep into it, I'm realizing uh, I think AI is actually going to really help communication among like humans, right? Because what you find is as I give it to like my managers, whereas they would go to someone that works for them on their team and give them sort of a general prompt, if you will, of like, we need this project done, and then get frustrated that it didn't get done the way they wanted to. And then you hand them a chat GPT and they're like, very specifically, this is what I need you to output, right? And you're like, man, if you did that to your human team member, you'd probably get a better outcome too, right? So I think it's
Yeah.
actually in a weird way making our team better at communicating human to human because you have to be so specific. It's just obviously easier to have the back and forth with the AI because you don't feel weird about like, all right, for the eighth time, I have to revise what I was saying because I didn't say it right, right? But it does force you to get really detailed and granular, which I think is actually really good for then turning around and dealing with team members as well.
Okay. Love that, man. That makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of funny because I could see that where they're hyper detailed with the AI model, but not with each other. But
Right.
that's an interesting take, man. Nobody's really brought that up, but it makes a lot of sense. How about like with your team? Like, what do you see are the top three use cases that you are blown away with that the people on your team are leveraging?
So I think the biggest one is on the sales side.
Mhm.
It goes back to that saving that time. Uh, everyone does research before their call. Man, is that so much more effective? Like we can just load up a 10K and be like, tell me all the things that X company is worried about, right? And it can draw right through and summarize like these are the things that they're concerned about for the upcoming year. This is the areas they're focused on. Even just prompting it and being like, what are the words that appear more often than others in this annual report, right? Now you can sort of parrot those words back when you're selling to a high level person. And it just makes you feel like you're more sort of in tune with them and what they're looking to accomplish.
Mhm.
And sure, that's something you could do. But when you have 5 demos in a day, you're not really sitting and reading the whole annual report for all the customers and all the prospects coming up. So this lets you kind of just feed it in. One I haven't seen people talk about much, but I found really useful. I haven't loved Gemini as much on
Hmm.
the Google side, and we use Google Workspace, so I had high hopes. But Notebook LM, which is part of there,
Yeah.
it's a great one because you can upload multiple sources and then talk across it. I found that to be really useful. I can bring 5, using the annual report example, of people in the same sector, and now I get a good idea of what's happening in that industry, not just for the particular company we're having a meeting with.
Oh,
I really like that use case too.
interesting. So it's funny because like I experimented with that, and no, a lot of people don't know about it because it's still in like the experimental
Yeah.
thing. But the Notebook LM, it's got some potential good use cases. Here's one thing that I'll tell you, man. Like, do you have Gemini or no? Do you have like the paid version of Gemini or no?
Yeah, I have the paid version of Gemini as well. I'm hopeful
So
as it
one
gets
of the
more
things.
helpful.
Okay. So I just
Yeah.
noticed this because I'm workspace as well, but I test all the tools like you. I like to nerd out. Um, One of the things that I noticed is just in Google Docs, it's gotten like 10 times better at summarizing and synthesizing the data just within Google Docs with Gemini. Have you seen that as well?
Yeah, definitely. And I'm finding, like, as I learn using the other apps, and even like I try to use, I guess I've got the OpenAI API mostly into other tools, and they all have a different kind of way they tell you to, like, hey, you get the best out of this note taking if you prompt this way. And then I'll take that and bring it back to Gemini and be like, oh, that's much more effective here as well. So I think it's really helpful to use multiple tools because you start to learn, oh, I can get a different output if I do it this way, or ask that question, or tell it to stop doing X, Y, or Z.
Hmm.
A lot of the frustration for me is like, I don't need the flowery, 2-paragraph explanation before you give me the answer on a lot of this stuff, right?
Yeah,
Sometimes I'm
yeah,
just like,
yeah, yeah.
you start to learn how to, like, tell it, like, okay, skip that this time and just give me the answer versus I need the bigger write up. I'll also tell you, I use a lot of explain to me like I'm 5, explain to me like I'm 12. Like, I'll go through the whole progression just to make sure I understand something. Like, all right, now explain to me like I'm an adult, and then kind of, can I really explain this myself? I find that to be tremendously helpful.
So I love what you're talking about, and I kind of glossed over this. I think it's an amazing use case. So you're taking multiple people, multiple people's 10Ks, and then
Mhm.
putting them in Notebook LLM,
Right.
and which is a free tool, right? And then you're understanding and synthesizing that in terms of like what the strategy of the industry is.
Right. So I could say, your Salesforce, HubSpot, like, tell me what's going on in the world of CRM, right? What are the biggest concerns across the board? What are the things people are looking forward to? What's the anticipated growth? And you can start to just really query it. And again, it takes a lot of digging to get it quite right. But it generally works really well. The concern always is the hallucination, right? So it's not that bad for a case where I'm just trying to get a feel for
Mhm.
an industry. But that's my worry overall for AI right now, where it's going to stagnate. There's only so much you can do to integrate it into a product if it's not going to be accurate 100% of the time. And
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not there yet. So it's got a little bit of a wall right now, I think, in terms of a lot of those use cases, but certainly directionally for things, it's incredibly helpful.
So what was the biggest insight you had from that use case? I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh, man. I think oddly, it comes down to, for all the knowledge and things that you learn, and you can spit out then metrics for people, like, the thing that it seems to have the most impact is using those words, right? There's just certain, like, keywords that they'll use within an industry or a company, and if you can use those within your presentation, you can almost see the person's eyes light up, like, oh, they get me, right? Like, we've been talking about whatever it is, synergy for months now, and you just said it, like, we're on the same page. It's amazing how that little, it's almost like like parroting someone's, if you're in a room with someone and they lean forward and you lean forward, like, you're on that same
Yeah,
wavelength. It almost lets you do that because you lose a little bit of that when you're on a Zoom call, right? You don't have that connection, so you can do it linguistically instead of just with, like, body language. So I
that's
actually
cool, man.
find it's probably the dumbest version of it, but the most effective.
No, that's good. That's really good because like I'll do that. Like I have a prompt that looks at the top priorities from the letter from the CEO and the annual report, the 10K,
Yeah.
and then integrate that into questions for like the first appointment, right? So that you
It's
have
good
all
for
those.
changes over time too. So if you give, like, give me the last 3 annual reports or all the quarterlies, right? And, like, what's changing? Like, what do you, hey AI, what do you think is, what direction basically are they headed, right? And that can give you a little more of a clue of, sort of, if they don't even realize it, which way they're going.
That's good too, man. Love it. You're dropping fire, man. First the top three use cases for gratitude, and now we got the the use cases for looking at annual reports or trends over time. And it's so easy to do if you just pop it in there. So one last question before we wrap up, because we're getting close on time, man. So, and I always ask folks this because I'm just curious. Like, you've done an amazing job. You've grown a company from zero to, between that 30 to 40 million in 10 years. What's the single biggest challenge you have in growing your business right
now? Oh boy. It's when you're in that CEO seat, you just have a level of, I don't know if passion's the right word, but like you want to get it done in a way that you just, no one else is going to have that. Right. And so how do you instill that, like that level of care into a team and get them motivated at a level near where you're at, sitting in that position? I think it's always kind of the hardest thing. It's probably top of mind for me now because it's July and like certainly hard on a summer Friday. My feeling of how much time and effort I want to put in versus a team member is obviously going to be a little bit different. But I think you need to instill that level of care and confidence and like, hey man, we're all on the same team headed in the same direction. And it just makes a world of difference when people, really believe in sort of the mission of what you're trying to accomplish. But it's always the hardest thing in my mind.
So true. So true, man. Well, I think that's good. A good note to end on. Where can people find you? Where can they start using Thnks? And then we'll wrap things up, man.
Yeah, so head to thnks.com, THNKS. You can learn a little more. You can sign up right there. There's no contract or fee to sign up, so you can give it a shot, try it out, or just poke around and see if you like it. And it's really easy and frictionless to do, so definitely check us out.
Excellent. Well, this was a ton of fun, man. Totally different episode. Last episode, we were all human and connection. This episode, we're all nerding out on different AI use cases. So love both of them, man. Thanks for being on the show. And I look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
I appreciate you, Ryan. Thank you.
Thanks, man.
Bye.